everything.
I have a dream that my son will play for us and so forth, right? But what they never do is they never actually tell you his views before his death. And you can Google it. He says, I fear that I've integrated my people into a burning house. Yeah? And that's what you never get quoted. Yeah? Now, I'm saying, how does integrating black people with Europeans, how does that benefit Europeans?
Not in many ways that I can think of.
Yeah, so what I'm saying, so...
It's like your friends, I don't know if it was with you, who said integration is wiping us out. It's bad for Europe. It's sort of
I think it's like, anything that's done has to be executed correctly. So a good concept is like, yes, everyone peacefully living together and sharing.
Yeah,
stuff,
that's
right?
the idealistic.
That's the idea, right? But then if it isn't like an equal kind of thing happening, then there's always going to be a disbalance. And what I'm saying, if you feel that in the world, by being of European descent, you have more access to certain things, let's say that goes on, right? That means that, yes, when you have black gays come together with white gays, then you tend to find that the white gays will have certain privileges over black gays, right? Yeah, right, okay. Yeah. But then even in a racist kind of concept, if you have like movements that is pro, say, same gender loving, as long as you have a European hierarchy in there, then they're going to have more benefits than, say, a movement that doesn't have any European in there at all.
I'd say that's to do because that's part of the plan. It's not to do with, there's a presence of Europeans, therefore let's promote the LGBTists more. It's just because that's part of their agenda. That's a better way for them to sort of introduce a more collective way of thinking through right. Sexual or gender politics than through race politics.
But things happen by osmosis, right? There's a natural thing that seems to happen, and I tend to look at that, like the natural, it's like if a person has power, right, they're going to have it in all areas, in all aspects, right? And it will manifest in different ways. So the example I was trying to give is, let's just say that you have 7 police officers who are all of European descent. The fact that they're of European descent, they've been raised with a certain ideology, right? They've been raised in a certain community and have a certain understanding, right? So they're going to be able to relate more to, say, the European children rather than, say the Asian children, right? So certain behavioural patterns that Asian community might have might be very alarming to the European police, and they might then demonstrate, a lack of understanding, and then potentially arrest people through a lack of understanding. They might not necessarily.
They won't have as much sort of sympathy's the wrong word, but understanding, mutual understanding. Yeah, I'm with you.
And I think the example we're trying to give is, I think they gave an example of like maybe some people were stopped in a car and then maybe like, don't do that again. While other people were like, I'm gonna have to take you in for it, right?
Yeah. That to me is more of a problem with the American justice system than it is of some sort of institutionalized white supremacy.
But then some people might say that's synonymous, isn't it?
Some people might. I say, I think people really sort of miss a trick when they demonise the American police force as racist, sort of institutionally, because you have some racist police officers. It's like, if you want to criticise the American justice system, there are a good many points you can make. Some guy shoots some unarmed person and their superior who's friends with them in the business can just move them to some other department and let them get away with it. Fine. That's, I think people who kind of just, racism is like the first sort of criticism. I think it's a weaker argument than...
You have to ask yourself, people have their own agendas, right?
Yeah, of course.
So if a black community are experiencing high loss by the police and no one's being prosecuted, right? Then to them, the most important concept is to try to fix that form of racism, right? But to a European person who might not be going for that, they might have a different thing. You will have to identify to you the corruption you see in the force. But obviously, you're not necessarily going to care about people from your community being killed because you're not seeing them. So if you've got 5 friends and none of them have been arrested for possession of marijuana, none of them have been shot dead, then you don't necessarily feel what someone else who might have gone through. Right?
No.
And it's a different dynamic. That's why I'm asking questions, because I don't know your upbringing, but I know it's defined in your questions today. So I'm saying, right? And all I can do is tell you everything we see. Now, I'm saying that is from the African American's perspective, it's quite consistent in the tales of saying we feel that there is a misjustice going on. And when you look at the history of it, I mean, they make documents now on Netflix and things are coming out, and now that people have mobile phones, you're seeing things, right? This is something that has been ongoing for a long time. they would say that's part of a white supremacist system.
They would, I suppose. I don't see it
Meaning
as such.
not being,
but
and maybe,
of course I won't.
Yeah, of course not. But meaning that you have a distinct advantage of being of European descent in that dynamic. And from what I see, because I study stuff, it's quite consistent. It's quite consistent in misjustice happening through, because some people say, you know what, it's actually down to poverty, right?
Yeah.
And then what I say is I agree with that, but then if you have a certain community that is more prone to poverty, that too can be because of racism.
That
right?
links back to race.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I'm saying,
that's a common
it's
argument. They
all-
say,
it's-
why are they like that in the
Yeah,
first place?
yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the fact, just because you said you researched this a lot, would bring me to my, I think, final question, which was, do you have any sort of suggestions of stuff I can sort of read, whether it's online or whether it's books, just to sort of better educate myself before I maybe come back? Or
I'm so bad with names, right? But do you have Netflix?
I've got Netflix here.
Okay, there's a what's the documentary? It's called 13. What's the documentary 13 on Netflix about the police, the prison system in America? I haven't even seen it. I haven't seen it myself.
I'll try and find what you're talking about.
Yeah, in Netflix there's two documentaries. There's one about the prison system,
Yeah.
right, and there's another one that just came out called I think When They See Us. I haven't seen none of them. I'm bad.
I think I know. When I see
Yeah,
us.
watch those, and you might get like an aspect of some of the realities that people of African American.
I heard that When They See Us was actually really, really PC and quite sort of focused
I
on
don't know,
political
but I've heard about it. So
I'll give it a
it's
look.
bad for me to recommend things I haven't seen.
Sure,
but
sure.
I'm trying to think of dramatization because
That's fine. But is there any also sort of, I suppose, like Pan-Africanist literature or something that you would sort of recommend?
It might be hard reading. Like, the funny thing is, the books that I read is, I mean, I struggle to actually get some of these books, right?
Yeah.
There's a guy called Neely Fuller Jr., right? And he made a book called The Competitor. It's a long title, but if you just research him, I mean, I had to get someone from Washington to send me the book.
Really?
Yeah, that's how the message.
So it's not just an eBay.
No, it's
away.
not.
Okay.
But a lot of people use his book to identify racism and how to deal with it. The person who he influenced a lot was another lady called Frances Cresswell, and she made a book called The ISIS Papers. So she tried to describe why people of European descent practice racism.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
you
do these have a historical focus as well? Because that's partly why I'm interested.
Well, more
in as
so the ISIS Papers. Okay. As in, because she actually lived in Nazi Germany. I don't know if it was Nazi Germany. It might be Nazi Germany at the time. So she was even studying how the Germans were mistreating the Jews. Maybe you might disagree. And she equated that to a similar thing. So she's got a book called, you'll be able to find it easier. The ISIS
Okay,
Papers,
I'll look
right?
into that.
I can't think of anything top of my
That's
head.
fine. Well, if another thing comes to your head, then do
Yeah.
let me know, because I'm interested in reading up on different opinions.
But the next thing might be easy because you can sit down and watch it with your girlfriend or your boyfriend. Or you just, you know, But the more thing that hopefully we can go down next week is seeing that by being of European descent, does that benefit movements? And I'm talking about the feminist movement, and then in relation to the European feminist movement versus the African feminist movement. You know, does being of European descent benefit? If so, how comes? And is that then part of a global system of white supremacy?
That's quite an intersectionalist sort of viewpoint.
Well, that's right.
I'm against intersectionality myself.
Well,
I think it's
for me, I tell black people that whenever you integrate these ideas, you tend to find that you have to compromise on the black agenda. And I've never seen the black agenda being pushed forward when people of African descent come with other people groups or other sexual groups or non-sexual groups. You tend to find that you go down the list, the agenda of the African or the black person seems to be pushed back. So, case in point, we look at feminist movements, we tend to find that the Europeans' struggles are pushed way ahead of the African women's struggles in those collective groups.
Okay.
So, but you'll have to research that.
I need
and
to
the best people to
research
ask is the women, of course, like,
Sure.
because they're part of it, right? So that's what I say. But did I ask you a question about Haiti? Because you said about Haiti.
Yes, you would say your answer, it seems to me, was that Europeans still, you know, in spite of all the Napoleonic Wars and the disagreement, that the kind of union against kind of black revolt still trumped internal European disagreements.
Of course, because Europeans are always going to fight about how much of Africa they want. Like I said,
That's not what the Napoleonic Wars were.
Oh no. But I'm just giving an example of one fight,
Okay,
right?
yes.
But I
yes,
mean, there's so many, right?
sure.
What I'm saying is, if you ask, in that situation, the French saw the British as allies in trying to keep the slavery institution going because they both benefit from that concept.
Yeah.
So in that case, they were all unified.
But they may have been also sort of had a secondary goal of wanting to undermine, because French colonies are technically competition to British colonies at that time. So maybe there was also an effort to, not work with each other as much as perhaps you think. I don't know. I need to.
Well,
look into
like I
colonial
said, from an African black perspective, we see a greater union when it comes to Europeans working together on race issues.
Yeah.
Right?
Actually, that's another thing. Another time I want to talk about is the idea of an African Union, which seems to be a sort of central tenet to Pan-Africanism. But I'll go that to another time.
Well, one thing you want to research, and you said yourself that you don't necessarily disregard what is defined as conspiracy theories and stuff.
Yeah.
But a Pan-African, one of the last Pan-African leaders, Gaddafi, who was actually killed, one of the things that he was trying to bring forward was a new African currency that was based upon actual ownership of gold. And a lot of people said,
the gold standard.
A gold standard, yeah. A lot of people said that part of his assassination, the speed of his assassination, was brought down because that would have crippled the European money system and the American
euro. Yeah.
And that was what's been pushed forward. So maybe you can study if there's interest in that.
I have met someone who's an out-and-out Gaddafi sort of fan here, who's given me food for thought. I can't say I'm a supporter of his, but it's possible.
And that would be a perfect example of Europeans getting cold, realising that if this African currency comes in, if it did happen, then it's going to undermine our currency. And we don't mind Africa having our currency, but to have your own, this is a no.
See, I'm more worried about the euro and the threat that poses to the British pound, to be honest with you. I'm less fussed about African currency. The European Union, to me, is much more of a problem than any sort of Pan-African concept. I'm just saying, sort of, to me it seems that in the interest of African peoples, an African Union seems to be a bad concept in the same way that the European Union, I think, is an awful thing for Europeans.
Well, I guess it depends how unified you are as a people, which is very challenging. Because, for example, people from England, not all of course, but many people generally don't like other people coming in. There are people who don't like it. So if you don't see another person as another human, another brother in whatever, or sister in whatever, then of course you're not going to want to unify these things. We've got our issues, you've got your issues. Africa, there is obviously some form of so-called tribalism, but I tend to see more Africans see the benefit of unifying. And to be honest, the reason why that might be is because they've all have the same experience of being mistreated.
That could be right.
Which is, I guess, if you were being bullied, this child was being bullied, and you were always being bullied by Chinese people all the time, and they bullied because you were European, it might make sense, even though you don't share his ideology or anything, to unify because...
Cultivate a certain anti-Chinese...
Well, not as anti-Chinese, but more of a defence.
Okay, yes.
I've never said that any Africans are anti-anything. It's like, you have to defend yourselves from a consistent oppressor.
Okay. Alright. Well, that's pretty much it. I only had these guys filming for about 10 minutes. But
well, next time you're coming in,
well, I've got a lot of other things I'd love to talk about, which is a bit hard when you've got about 10 or so people. But
you can literally, like I said, you can say it there. You don't have to let everyone.
Yes, but I also like letting the conversation drift to wherever the other people were.
Or write down as a list.
I could do that as well. Yeah.
So, you can list down.
Well, Dust and Abel and the other folks have got plenty of more interesting things to say than I do. But that's
like I said, the people at home can make the choice. Really, that's the thing.
Yeah.
The thing is, because of your age group and your experience, you're probably going to say things that they don't know a woman.
Yeah,
so you're representing a different generation, aren't you? So,
very true. Yeah.
So that's why. So like I said, when I try to talk on the camera and stuff, it is to try to get a wider audience involved in the content. That's why when we argue and fight and bicker, we're doing the collective, the great audience a disservice.
Yeah.
Because we're not actually. And sometimes, like I said, the perfect example was we had two people arguing, but they agreed. But they were offended by.
It forestalls the whole system.
They're offended by how words were delivered, and that's why we want to kind of.
Focus on the what's being said rather than how's been said. Yeah, exactly.
All right, brother.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. I'll take care.
Please. Why am I staying there again?
I wanted to see if you can continue this conversation.
Well, come here then. The camera's there, isn't it?
We don't really want to.
Why would it be okay this way? This way. Content over everything. From your humanity.
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
This conversation. He's a passionate lad, and please God, he never spills any blood, only his own, and he's trying to save somebody else. Then you go straight to heaven. You realise that. No greater love of any man than to lay down his life for his brother. There you are. God bless you.